up and up. We're gonna get the music rockin', gonna get the bodies jumping, wanna get the party pumping round here. We're gonna get the walls shaking with the noise we will be making, gonna get the party pumping round here. Saying hey, hey, cheers, we fear no beer. To all my brothers, sisters, and here we say hey, hey, cheers.
Welcome, everybody, to another week of the Smoke Show here on the FHN Network. As you can tell, I'm feeling a whole lot better than I was last week. Re-energized, revived, and ready to go. I'm Jason Maslico, better known these days as Dark Guy, and my co-host, as always, Ryan Drury. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing well, man. I got to be honest, I am incensed today. I am fired up. I
can't imagine why.
I am angry, and we will dig into that later. I'm fired up that you're feeling better. Hope everybody enjoyed last week's show with David and Sarah Ayres. Very exciting stuff. But obviously, Dark Guy, we have to start with some unfortunate news that hit the hockey world on Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing we can really say that probably hasn't already been said, but we're going to take our shot at it. The unbelievably amazing human Walter Gretzky passed away at 82 years of age on Thursday night. Hitting the hockey world late in the evening with the news. A lot of people didn't see it till Friday morning. There's just not enough you can say. Every radio show, every podcast since then, every single sports show has touched on the fact that in one way or another, he was the ultimate hockey dad. And I don't think it could have been put more eloquently, quite frankly, because my experiences with Walter growing up a hockey fan in Canada and just seeing what Walter did for hockey in Canada, in smaller communities like Brantford, he was just always there, and he always had the time for people. It didn't matter how many people were lined up. He stopped to take a picture with everybody. He talked to everybody. He always had a time to sign an autograph for a kid. And, I think back to my interactions with Walter as I was growing up, as I was a hockey fan, meeting him and seeing how polite he was. It always left an impression on me of how I wanted to be when I met people, especially after, when I ended up going viral. I made a very conscious effort to want to be remembered the way I remembered my interactions with Walter. And, everybody has a Walter story, and, it's a tough loss. I'm choking up a little bit here 4 days later after the fact. And while he wasn't, part of my immediate family and my interactions with him were limited, I felt like I truly knew who he was.
Yeah, and I think you speak for everybody there, Dark Guy. And like you said, we can't say much more than what's already been said, other than to maybe share a little anecdote here and there. I only met Walter very briefly one time in my life, and reflecting back, I feel very lucky to have done so. It was actually at my best friend when they were playing in the juvenile playoffs in the All-Ontario final, funnily enough, against Orangeville, where producer Tyler is from. He showed up at the final and did a ceremonial face-off. And everybody there, he talked to everybody in the arena. It was incredible. There were probably 2,000-3,000 people packed in for game one of this 7-game series. And he probably made his way around and talked to every single person. He was so gracious with his time. And I got to briefly meet him and shake his hand. And Walter actually told me that he thought I had a great voice, which, was the first thing I thought about when I saw the news. And I'm sure it's probably the first thing everybody thought about when they heard the news, an interaction, maybe like me, just one or across many, and something just great that, the thing that strikes me is that, Walter went out of his way, and Gord Miller was talking about this the night it happened. He went out of his way to make you feel important and to just say something kind. And he told me he thought I had a great voice. And I mean, I guess that's worked out for me okay. But I remember at the time being 18, 19 years old, and that just made me feel fantastic. Wayne Gretzky's dad thought I had a good radio voice. So it's incredibly sad. I'll share one other story. A friend of mine, Nick, that I grew up with, works in hydro, and they were fixing lines in Brantford, where, of course, the Gretzky family is from. And they were actually out front of Walter's famed house, where, you know, there are numerous stories of him just sitting out on the porch and inviting people inside. Of course, he had the greatest Wayne Gretzky shrine ever in his basement. And this was one of those times. Nick and his coworkers, 3 other fellas, Walter waved at them and actually brought them some lemonade and invited them into the basement and showed them all this great Wayne Gretzky stuff. He didn't have to do that. These guys that he doesn't know from a hole in the ground, and he just invited these 4 strangers into the house after talking to them, obviously all of them big hockey fans, and said, well, come on downstairs. Let me show you Wayne's all-star jersey. And what, like, just, you know, incredible the way he went out of his way to always make himself available. But the biggest thing I can say for the legacy of Walter Gretzky is how he made everybody else feel and made everybody else feel important. And it's an incredibly sad loss. I would suggest as well to anybody, obviously there's the famous story that he suffered a pretty scary brain aneurysm in 1991, I believe it was. And unfortunately, it really affected Walter's long-term memory. But a lot of things changed in his life after that. And I believe it was CBC, I could be wrong there, that made a documentary movie about it. It's called Waking Up Wally. It's a fantastic movie. Please watch it if you haven't seen it. And, you know, it's just sad to lose Canada's hockey dad, which is what he really was. And, of course, the famous backyard rink. Really, you know, Gord Miller was talking about this the night it happened as well. The reason that the backyard rink, you know, kind of became so famous is Walter kind of knew how to build the best one. But the reason he built it is because the Gretzky family really didn't have any money. And it was cheaper for Walter to just build a backyard rink and watch Wayne practice, and Brent, of course, as well, and the other kids from the window, than to waste gas to drive to the park where there was a free outdoor rink and sit in the car and waste gas. So that was a big reason why he did that. And obviously, condolences to all of his friends and family. Yeah, we're going to really miss Walter.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, I have 2 stories I have to share. I kind of alluded to them a little bit in my tribute to Walter on Twitter back Thursday night, but I want to go into maybe a little more detail. So, you know, my father, Alex, Dart Dad, as he likes referring to himself these days as well, he took me to a lot of Leaf games when I was younger. Traveling from Sudbury down to Toronto, you know, hotels, food. You know, it was something that my dad had to work hard for to do, and my mother as well. But years later, when I was more established, I first moved down to Toronto. I was working my ass off to make it in a city where, you know, at the time, minimum wage was a whole lot less. And one of the first things I did was save up money to take my dad to see Sidney Crosby. My dad always made sure that the games he took me to when I was younger, he took me to see Wayne Gretzky. He took me to see Mario Lemieux and Jaromir Jagr. He took me to see all the best teams. I saw Yzerman. I saw LaFontaine. There is not a hockey icon from the 80s, early 90s that I didn't see, courtesy of my parents taking me to those games. So when I got down to Toronto, I wanted to take my dad to see Sid. He was fairly new in the league at the time, and it was just my way to show my dad thank you. Lo and behold, that night, before the game, I take my dad to dinner at Wayne Gretzky's restaurant. We're sitting down, we're waiting to order, and who walks in? None other than Walter Gretzky. Where we were sitting, I saw him come in right away, and he was stopping table to table. He was getting hounded for pictures, and I'm like, I have to meet Walter. I am in the same vicinity. I am in the same building as Walter. I need to meet him. And at first I was a little nervous because I saw how much he was getting swarmed, and I just didn't want to be, guy number 100 when he's just trying to sit down. That went up to him for a picture, and it quickly dawned on me really very fast that Walter wasn't actually getting swarmed. He was more or less making his rounds. And I calmed down because I'm like, you know what? He's going to flat out come to our table. And sure enough, he made his rounds. Every single person stopped, asked them their names, asked them how they're enjoying their dinner. Are you going to the game tonight? The whole 9 yards. Of course, taking pictures, signing autographs for anybody who asked. And then he finally comes around to us. And me and my dad are, Mr. Gretzky, absolute honor to meet you. And my dad passes his camera off to, I think it was a waitress that was there, and proceeds, she asked, like, do you want a picture with the Flash? And my dad's like, no, I think it should be good. And Walter chirps at my dad right away and says, you always take a picture with the Flash. It doesn't matter. You make sure the Flash is on. So we quickly made sure the Flash was on. Like I said, it was just, I was trying to do something nice for my dad to thank him, and it couldn't have been any more poetic that night was the night we both met Walter Gretzky for the first time. They keep calling him hockey's the ultimate hockey dad. I worded it a little bit differently. For me, he's hockey's dad. Hard to argue when his son was Wayne Gretzky. So is Wayne Gretzky. My second story, we got to fast forward a little to when I became Dark Guy. Obviously, when I went viral, Walter's health wasn't as much as good as it was when I met him the first time. He while he was still Walter, he wasn't quite the same. And I am at the ACC Leafs versus Capitals playoff game. I'm getting swarmed for pictures, and I'm sitting one row behind Walter where his season's tickets were. Walter's in front of me, like 7 seats over, and I'm getting picture after picture after picture. Like, people are coming from me to go to Walter, coming from Walter to come to me for a picture. First intermission, somebody comes up to me. Turns out we ended up meeting later and being friends. Denny Keenan comes up to me and he says, "You know who Walter Gretzky is, right?" And I just kind of gave him like this, "What are you, stupid?" kind of look. Of course I know who he is. He's like, "Walter wants to get a picture with you." And I said, "Yeah, of course I'll take a picture with Walter." So he was in the row in front of me. I went to step over into his row. Bless his heart, Walter Gretzky looks at me and says, "No," and starts trying to climb the row to come up to me. And I'm like, I'm having a heart attack, okay? Because it's Walter Gretzky trying to climb a row of seats in the ACC to come to take a picture with me. And obviously I'm helping him. The people beside him are helping him. I'm like, all I can keep thinking is, don't let Dark Guy be the guy that Walter falls climbing over a row of seats to get a picture with. But, he did it. And that's what, when you alluded to, he went out of his way to make you feel important. And he did things that he didn't have to do. Like, who am I to Walter Gretzky that he wanted to climb over that row of chairs to come and take a picture with me? Never forget it. Absolutely feel like I lost a part of my own family, like many others did. Many others do. And we lost a great one. Rest in peace, Walter Gretzky.
Absolutely. Couldn't say it better myself. And just quickly as well, obviously the news of Walter was followed up by more very sad news in the sports world. Of course, longtime football analyst and player in the NFL, the CFL, Chris Schultz, formerly of TSN. And man, I grew up loving Chris and watching his Risky Business segment. It was the best. He was the football guy here in Canada. And he unfortunately passed away at the age of 61 due to complications from a heart attack. Just extremely sad and extremely untimely death. And, the other show I host with my friends Clarky and Steve Sabern at CKNX called MWO Sports, we recently put up a little bonus episode where we talked with former Argonauts GM Mike McCarthy, who had a very long relationship with Chris. Re-signed him twice when he got to the Argos, of course, was part of that 91 Grey Cup team. And, really, really had a special relationship with Chris. And we talked to Mike for a good 20 minutes about him. And, of course, he shared some stories about Walter Gretzky as well, because you remember Wayne Gretzky and John Candy were part of an ownership conglomerate that owned the Argos at the time. And Walter was around the Argos quite a bit. And they actually ended up, Mike and the Argos staff got flown down. He tells a great story in this video. They got flown down to LA when Wayne was playing there, of course. And he asked if he would fly Walter down as well. And Walter famously didn't like airplanes. And Walter clutched Mike McCarthy's arm pretty well the whole flight down to LA. He really did not like planes, but to lose Walter and then hear news of Chris Schultz, who my co-host Chris Clark on MWO Sports, he actually got Schultzy started in the broadcasting business. Now, Clarky was on this show, The Smoke Show. I think it was our second episode, and talked a lot about his time at the Fan and MLSE and everything. Back when he was at the Fan, and at the time, it was right around when he was executive producer of Bob McCowan's show. This is before Rogers owned the Fan. Chris had retired after the 96 or 97 season, had a number of knee problems. And Clarky went down to Old Exhibition Stadium and was kind of asking around, are there any former Argos that you think we could bring in that would be good on the radio? And one of the staffers said, you got to get Schultzy. Just this big 6'8" giant of a guy with hands the size of watermelons. And he was so passionate. You could see that in his work. And he got on the radio and was, of course, excellent at it. And he told Clarky, I'll do this, but I don't ever want to be on TV. I don't want to do television. Well, lo and behold, about 5 years later, he's on TSN and he's the best football analyst in the country. It's extremely sad. I feel bad for my friend Clarky and, of course, Mike and everybody that loved and knew Schultzy so well. Rod Smith tweeted out a really beautiful tribute to him. Just a very, very sad 12 hours in Canada.
Absolutely. And I mean, we don't want to turn the whole show into a memorial here, but would be remiss if we didn't mention the passing of Mark Pavlik either.
Yeah.
Part of the miracle on ice, passed away. I believe he was 63 2 days ago. Obviously, another legendary figure in sports. So it was a tough week all around. Schultzy was a good one too. I actually got a Schultzy autograph on a card in one of my old collector's boxes there. So. Feel privileged to have that to hold on to as a memory of a time when I met him as well. But you know what? The show must go on. I know there are a lot of topics that we can dive into, but since I normally go on a Leafs rant without even asking you, oftentimes
I know it's coming.
I'm just going to segue over to you. Tom Wilson's 7-game suspension for his hit on Brandon Carlo. One of the biggest Cat fans I personally know is my co-host Ryan Drury. So we're just going to hand this over to you and let's hear it, bud. What do you got?
Well, before I get too negative, we'd also be remiss if we didn't mention we're recording this on International Women's Day. So thank you to all the great women in our lives, of course. I think of my mom, all my aunts and cousins, my wonderful girlfriend, Kate. And, there are a lot of great women working in the sports industry, man. And I'll highlight one. I saw her tweet just before we went on the show about just some negative crap she's been getting on Twitter. Marissa Roberto, who, of course, does a lot of the online content for TSN and the Bar Down crew. I think she's awesome. She's one of the many women in this industry who are up and coming and deserve attention. So happy International Women's Day to all the great women out there. Now let's go full negative. Let's get nuclear here.
I'm ready to go nuclear, and you know why.
Listen,
you know why.
I do know why, and we're going to address that. I thought a lot about this when the suspension came down, about this show and how I wanted to address this. So let's address it, and I want to do it in segments. First, let's just discuss Tom Wilson, who he is, what he does on the ice, and whether or not he deserves this latest one. Then we'll address the actual suspension and the league's hypocrisy, and we'll go from there. So let's just start with Tom Wilson. I have said numerous times, and when he got the 20-gamer 2 seasons ago, I was one of the first ones to say he deserves it, and he deserves more. I actually said on MWO Sports, the show I host, that he deserved 30 plus, and you couldn't argue it. He tried to remove Oscar Sundqvist's head from his body, and he deserved that. And the 3 prior, he deserved those 2. And he has, unfortunately, in a circumstance like this one, earned himself a reputation where he is going to get so little benefit of the doubt, as a matter of fact, none, and he's actually forced himself into a situation where he is getting suspended for something that no one in NHL history has ever been suspended for before. And I'm sorry. It's a joke. Tom Wilson has deserved every suspension he's gotten by being completely reckless. And when he first came into this league, I remember watching him in the OHL playoffs against the Rangers when the Plymouth Whalers still existed. He was, I believe, teammates with Tyler Seguin, and they were in the playoffs, and he was running the Kitchener Rangers out of the odd by himself. And I thought, my God, that kid is going to be a freak if he can figure out how to get any, solid offense in his game. He was a pretty good OHL player, not a great scorer, but a solid one. And the Caps drafted him in the first round. And for the first few years, when he came in with Adam Oates there and everything, he was a 4th-line goon. He was out there to throw hits and be a physical presence. And I remember telling the guys on the Washington Capitals fan cast that were impatient with him, just wait, he can do more. And Barry Trotz proved that. And I'll leave this segment of the conversation off by saying this. Tom Wilson deserves the reputation he has. I'm the biggest Caps fan ever. I'm sorry. I am the biggest Caps fan you'll ever meet. It's etched in my skin, boys and girls. And I'll tell you this. He deserves his reputation. He deserved the suspensions he got. But I'll say this. For anybody out there, and there's hundreds of you that are tweeting, they should kick Tom Wilson out of the league. He's a useless goon. He does nothing good for the NHL. He's the only guy that hits people like this. Oh, really? He's the only guy? No, let me correct you. He's the only guy that gets suspended for it. And other guys would have the reputation too if the league would be somewhat consistent. Now, if you think Tom Wilson is legitimately a useless player with no place in the NHL, log off social media. No one deserves to hear your insanity, because that means you're either one of 3 things: stupid, ignorant, or you only watch one team. I'm the biggest Caps fan there is. I watch every team. Atlanta Thrashers, look at that. Atlanta Thrashers. I even watched them. How bad were they? So, or you're all 3. Tom Wilson is a Stanley Cup champion that was on the top line with the greatest goal scorer of all time, who said we wouldn't win the Stanley Cup without Tom Wilson. I don't know about you Twitter morons, but I'll take Ovechkin's word over yours. Now let's move on to the suspension at hand here.
Well, hold on a second.
Yeah, I'll offer some thoughts here.
My one problem with the NHL going to the suspension right now is the way they worded it. You might as well say hitting in hockey is illegal. When you watch the breakdown of the video, and I'm sure you were going to get to that in the suspension, when you're saying whether you felt it was suspension or what it should have been, there's a point in time where they're basically describing what the boarding rule is, and they basically call every hit in hockey. They basically describe every hit in hockey in their description. So it's like, you're basically just saying that Tom Wilson's guilty because he made a hockey play.
So a lot of people are going to argue with me and say that it's not a hockey play, that it was an unnecessary hit to make. I can understand, I guess, where you're coming from, but the puck was right there. Now, people are going to say it's an unnecessary hit because Tom Wilson could have just went and got the loose puck that Carlo was fighting off Verona for. And people are angry at Verona for cross-checking him when he went down, too.
He went down, yeah.
He shouldn't have done that. That was way more suspendable, in my opinion, than what Wilson did. And I know people are going to completely disregard anything I say from this point on because I'm a Caps fan, and they're going to go, I can't believe you're defending Tom Wilson here. Well, believe it, because having said everything I just said in my first little breakdown about how he deserves his reputation, he has been a reckless hockey player at times and hurt his team and himself because of it. Now, over the last number of years, where he, under the league's rule, no longer counts as a repeat offender, even though the league said in their breakdown that his prior history factored into the suspension, which if I'm the NHLPA, I'm filing a grievance because you're not supposed to do that. Because by your rule, and if people have a problem with me saying that, you don't have a problem with me, you have a problem with the league because it's in their rules. He's not considered a repeat offender anymore. I'm sorry. Now, for everybody saying it's an unnecessary hit, I'll listen to your argument. Yeah, did he need to crush him into the boards? I guess not. But the NHL even said in the breakdown of the video that despite Carlo being a defenseless player, he was eligible to be hit because the puck was there. And I'm sick and tired of this defenseless player BS. I'm sorry. I know people are going to go, Ryan, you're blaming the victim. And to a degree, I guess I am. Where are these guys coming from into this contact sport where they're just burying their head in the ice? Eric Lindros wouldn't have got concussed in 1998 if he had kept his head up. Or sorry, that was 2000, the Stevens hit happened. Watch that play. Eric Lindros, one of the best players ever. And he's in the Hall of Fame. And he goes down the ice for 40 feet looking at the puck. Yeah. If the league wants to completely eliminate, like these Twitter trolls say, if you want to completely eliminate the risk of any head contact in the NHL, the NFL, rugby, any contact sport, you have to ban hitting. And that means that you are effectively going to pay hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, depending what NHL market you are in, to watch a glorified public skate. Okay? So if that's what you want, be careful what you wish for. Now, let's dig into the hit. We'll move past the whether he needed to do it or not. It was a vicious, rough game. It was a nasty game. Washington, Boston, it's always must-watch TV. He makes the hit. Now, for everybody that keeps telling me that the head was the principal point of contact, was it really? Because I have an image here on my phone, and I know it's dangerous to play with still images. I don't know if everybody can see that. I must have missed anatomy class and they told everybody that your left nipple is your head.
That's what I couldn't get over. The amount of times.
Really? That's his head first? Are you sure? Now, I'll say this. Does he ride up afterward with his hands? Because Tommy's hands were too high. And the Caps have worked with him over the last couple seasons to keep his stick along the ice when he hits. And he's been very effective. He's not a repeat offender anymore. Now, he rides up into his head with his hands and forces it into the glass. That hit happens so often in hockey. And that's why the referees who you know this, Jason, I hate the referees more than ever, and I'm actually prepared to say after seeing some recent games that NHL officiating is at an all-time low. It's never been worse, ever. It's never been worse. And Gary Bettman, Bill Daly, and Stephen Walkom have some answering to do. I want to know what they're telling these guys to do on the ice. But even the referees, who people will say, well, this proves your point, Ryan, said it wasn't a penalty. The only reason that Tom Wilson got suspended is because Brandon Carlo unfortunately went to the hospital, got released later that day, by the way. Now, he'll be out for a while, and that's unfortunate. He's a really good young player. I'd love to have him on my team. The only reason Tom got suspended is because he's Tom Wilson. He hit a guy hard, and the guy went to the hospital. Now, listen, he's the first player ever to be suspended for boarding. Okay? Now, if the argument is that hits like this that Tom threw should be illegal and suspendable, I will have that conversation. I'm very open to that. You think that any hit thrown where the head is hit as a result of initial contact, which, by the way, move on from this point now. If you think the head was the principal point of contact on this hit, you're an idiot, and I'm not listening to you. I'm not engaging you in this conversation. It wasn't. But if the argument is that you want hits where the guy grazes the shoulder, which he did here, and then rides up into the head, is suspendable, I'll agree. Fine. Let's make those hits illegal. But they're not right now. The rule is that if the head isn't the principal point of contact, it's not Rule 48. Okay? So under the league's rule, which again, you don't have a Tom Wilson problem here. And again, let me say, I agreed that he deserved his prior suspensions. So don't just say, oh, he's a Caps fan and he wants Tom Wilson in the lineup. The Caps can still win without him in the lineup. They kicked the crap out of the Flyers last night. How about that? The team that everybody said would lead the East Division. Ha! Okay, the Caps can still win without Tom in the lineup. They're just way better with him. So don't come at me saying, oh, he's a Caps fan. He's defending the worst dirty player of all time. Anybody ever watch Claude Lemieux play? Claude Lemieux almost killed Chris Draper with the end of the boards. Go watch that hit. You think Tom Wilson's bad? Ha! Okay, so now, if you think that hit should be suspendable, I'll agree. But right now, it isn't. The league rule says so. So you don't have a Tom Wilson problem here. The 4 other times he got suspended, I'd agree. You do have a Tom Wilson problem. The problem here is the league's rule. And they contradicted it. So I'm sorry, if you think that he deserved the suspension, I'm going to tell you what. The only reason he got suspended is because his name's Tom Wilson and the guy got hurt. Now, let's move on and talk about the NHL's hypocrisy with this rule. Because like I said earlier in this rant that I'm on, and this is an all-timer for me, I hope we record and send this out to everybody. I want to keep this for the record books. If you're going to talk to me about, remember earlier I said Tom Wilson deserves his reputation, but the only reason everybody thinks he's the dirtiest player in the league is one of 2 things. Both things, actually, for everybody. One, the NHL only suspends him for stuff like this. In terms of slapping the book on them. He's the only guy that has that multi-suspension thing going on where it's 5+ games. He's the only guy they throw the book at because he's bigger and stronger than everybody. Do I agree he's reckless? Yes, he is. He's a dangerous player a lot of the time. And that sucks because I want him in the lineup. We want a Stanley Cup with him on the first line. Don't tell me he's not useful. So one thing is, the NHL only seems to throw the book hard at him. And 2, he doesn't play for your team. All you trolls out there going, kick this guy out of the league and blah, blah, blah. Let me just say this. And Dark Guy, you correct me if I'm wrong, because Austin Matthews is a really good player and Marner's a really good player, but you know better than I do. The Maple Leafs and the fan base have always loved the lunch pail guys. When I was growing up, by far the most popular Maple Leaf for a good 5 or 6 years was Darcy Tucker. By a landslide. Tucker was beloved for good reason. He was a smaller guy that was just gritty. He'd score 20. He'd get in a fight. And God, he'd drive the other team nuts. But he was pretty dirty. He incinerated Mike Pekka's knee one time with one of the worst submarine hits I've ever seen. I watched it the other day just to remind myself, it's horrible. But he was a really good player. And Tom Wilson is exactly the same. And you correct me if I'm wrong here, Dark Guy, but if Tom Wilson played for his hometown Toronto Maple Leafs, as an example, he would be the most popular athlete in Toronto by a mile. The only guy that would maybe outsell him in jerseys is Matthews because he's disgusting. Tom Wilson would be like a holy son of Toronto if he played for the Leafs or the Flyers or the Bruins. Can you imagine if Tom Wilson played for the Bruins? He's the most Bruins player that never Bruined. Like, come on. So the only reason you're all saying this is because he doesn't play for your team. And if he played for your team, you'd all come running. And I'm not running to defend him. Let me be clear. I know it sounds like that. I'm not running to defend him. What I'm more running, you know what? I'm not even that upset he's suspended. Fine. If that's a suspension, even though it completely contradicts the NHL's rules, fine. You'll never convince me, though, that it wasn't because the kid, Carlo, unfortunately went to the hospital. That's what happened. So what I'm more angry about, believe it or not, after getting pretty mad just now, what I'm more angry about, Dark Guy, is the hypocrisy of this league to do what I said earlier. Ignore other guys that do this too. And my goodness, did our friend Bradley Marchand ever provide us with some great material to talk about? Oh, Bradley. Because the night that hit happened, Jack Edwards and his bonehead partner, the worst broadcast crew in sports, interviewed Brad Marchand in the intermission of that the first intermission of that game. And Brad Marchand said that hit was a BS hit by Tom Wilson and it's gutless and blah, blah, blah. 2 days later,
not even, less than 48 hours,
Brad Marchand, who licks people, slew foots people, slashes people behind the legs, punches people when they're not looking, elbows goaltenders innocuously, cross-checks a 19-year-old star defenseman named Ty Smith of the New Jersey Devils in the back of the neck. Did he get a penalty? No. Is the league offering him an in-person hearing for head contact and the head being the primary point of contact? No! And so what are we doing here? Tom Wilson's the only guy that hits people in the head. Oh, yeah? Really? Well, Brad Marchand does that, and my God, have I got a laundry list of stuff here. Let me give you a couple of Caps examples, because I'm a Caps fan. They're the most recent things that pop to mind. Earlier this season, and Dark Guy, I know you saw this hit. We talked about it on the show. Leo Komarov, Uncle Leo, tried to kill Lars Eller from behind, head first into the boards. Lars Eller left the game and could not return. Now, luckily, Lars wasn't hurt too bad. I think he missed 4 games. Didn't go to the hospital. And I guess maybe now teams should do that. They should just wheel a guy to the hospital. It's the only way anybody else will get suspended. But Lars Eller was knocked out of that game. Now, Leo Komarov, to the referee's credit, got a 5-minute major, which he should have. He also should have got a 3 or 4 game suspension for that. Hitting from behind is the second most gutless play in hockey, followed by slew footing. Let's talk about that right after I bring up one more Caps example. 2 years ago, the Capitals are defending their Stanley Cup title. Boy, that was fun. Fountains, yay! They're defending the Stanley Cup title against the Carolina Hurricanes. Warren Fogle, who I think's a pretty good player, hammered TJ Oshie from behind and broke his clavicle. He broke his clavicle and separated his shoulder. He didn't get a penalty. He didn't get a call from the league. Nothing happened. And we lost one of our best players and lost that series in 7 games. Tom Wilson's the only guy who hits people dirty. No, he's the only one that gets suspended for it. Let's move to another dirty play, Dark Guy. Do you like sleuth?
Is this what it feels like to be a producer?
Yeah, it does. Do you
welcome
like?
Welcome to the Ryan Drury show with
I'm sorry,
producer Tyler and Dark Guy.
Do you like slew footing? I don't, but Kyler Yamamoto and Brett Pesce do, and they didn't get suspended for that. And that's the dirtiest play in the game. They got fined, thank God. Oh, they got fined. Oh, and then people are tweeting, oh, well, Ovechkin speared that guy in the nuts and only got fined. Yeah, they should have suspended Ovi. They should have suspended him. And I tweeted when that happened, it was the best $5,000 he ever spent because that Trent Frederick nobody tried to fight him 800 times. Who are you? Get off the ice. Can't kiss Alex Ovechkin's seat blade. Get out of here. Now, he should have been suspended for that. If they suspended Ovi a game or two for that, yeah, he deserved that. But then these guys go slew-footing guys insanely dirtier. You could kill somebody doing that. If a guy's helmet ever falls off and he cracks his skull on the ice, the NHL, someone's going to die on the ice. And I don't want that to happen. But these two guys get away with paying a couple $1,000s after slew-footing a guy. Brett Pesce's was terrible. Like, he intentionally did it. He saw the guy, went right after him, and he knew he wanted to do it. It's a joke. So they don't get suspended for that. But remember, kids, Tom Wilson's the only dirty player in the NHL. Now, let me take you back to another incident. Mark Stone recently, I can't even remember who it was, had a terrible hit. But he's a star player. He plays on Vegas, new franchise. He didn't get suspended either. Didn't even get looked at. Alex Kerfoot. Here's one I'll let you comment on. Alex Kerfoot killed a guy from behind. Now, he felt bad for it right away. He should be suspended. It's a suspension. And he didn't. And the guy didn't get suspended. Who was it on Vancouver that Kerfoot buried from behind? Who was that?
I can't recall off the top.
Was it Tyler Mott? Doesn't matter. No, he's not going to get a call either. NHL, no, that's fine. Your name doesn't rhyme with Rom Tilson, so you're not getting looked at. No, let me take you back, and here's more hypocrisy. Everybody, Ovechkin should have been suspended for that spear. I agree. How about the hypocrisy of the league with the guy, and I know exactly what people are going to say. They're going to roll their eyes. Here comes the Caps fan whining about the Penguins. Sidney Crosby. Sidney Crosby chopped a guy's finger off a couple years ago. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Let me repeat that slowly for you trolls.
It was the tip, to be fair, but
he chopped a guy's finger off. Now, yes, it was the tip of his finger, but he slashed him so hard.
Just the tip, baby. Just the tip.
Just the tip. Oh. He slashed him so hard that he cut the top of the guy's finger off. Should he have been suspended? No, but a fine might have been nice. But it's Sid. He's the holy grail of Canadian hockey. He's the poster child. And he's not from Russia. Can't suspend him. Can't do it. 2 years ago, the St. Louis Blues come back from an all-time horrific start and win the Stanley Cup. During that regular season, Sidney Crosby, from behind, poor guy didn't even see it coming, readjusted the groin area of Ryan O'Reilly. Everyone saw it.
Yeah.
He didn't get suspended. He didn't get suspended at all. And this coming from a guy who, hey, I respect Sid a lot more than I did when I was 15 and just hated him with a burning passion. He's such a good hockey player. He's a top 5 player of all time. He should have been suspended at least one time in his NHL career. Earlier in his career, he was such a gutless pig. He was punching guys in scrums and running away behind the referee. I'm sorry. He chopped a guy's finger off, guys. Here's one that you'll remember well, Dark Guy. And funnily enough, to try and erase some of my perceived Caps bias, I'm glad this guy's on my team right now. A guy by the name of Zdeno Chara, who was the bane of Leaf fans' existence and many others in the Eastern Conference for years. And rightfully so. So good, but so dirty.
Yeah.
Let me take you back to a night in Montreal. I believe it was the 2012 or 2013 season. And it really doesn't matter what the date was. The Boston Bruins are visiting the Montreal Canadiens to renew one of the greatest rivalries in sports. And a young man by the name of Max Pacioretty comes skating up the ice past the Boston Bruins bench. And an older fella named Zdeno Chara went up behind him and guided him into the stanchion and broke his neck in 2 places. Zdeno Chara, now we can argue about intent of that incident all we want. Zdeno Chara almost killed a man on the ice. More, I think, because of his size than intent. But Max Pacioretty could have died right there on the ice. If you remember, the Montreal police opened a case against Zdeno Chara for assault, which in retrospect was a bit of a hero move by the Montreal police.
Yeah.
Zdeno Chara, I want you to rewind the clock. And I'm not even giving you an example right now, folks, of something that happened 30 years ago when, like, Claude Lemieux killed Chris Draper or Dale Hunter annihilated Pierre Turgeon after the whistle, after the winning goal. This was from like 7-8 years ago. Rewind time. And Dark Guy, I'm going to stop here. I'm out of examples. I'm out of breath. You tell me what Tom Wilson would have got for that Chara hit on Max Pacioretty. Thank you, folks.
Well, I was taking notes here, and I wanted to, rebut and discuss some of the points you made, but we definitely don't have enough time to cover it all.
Please.
First of all, to answer your most direct question, this isn't a Boston or Montreal thing, but I really, it's going to be bad to say, but really didn't have a problem with the Chara hit on Pacioretty a few years ago.
Now, that's not what I asked you. What would Tom Wilson get for doing that?
Absolutely. And that's kind of where I was alluding to is everything you said, I think is true. I think you can argue the intent. You can argue that he is a beast of a man that was able to manhandle Patches into that position, no problem. But I don't think it was that bad of a play, especially given the nature of the game at the time. But your question is, if that was Tom Wilson, yeah, they throw the book at him. He probably misses the remainder of the season, playoffs, and possibly into the next year with something like that.
That's all I wanted to know.
Especially with the outcome of the broken neck. So there are so many points I wanted to discuss and talk about through the whole Wilson thing, but there's no point in rehashing it. So I'm just going to go to this point. What is the common denominator in a majority of the scenarios you brought up? It's the Boston Bruins. Jeremy Jacobs. Colin Campbell, whose son Gregory played for the Boston Bruins. Like, I don't want to go into a big conspiracy theory. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again.
Mm-hmm.
How the NHL Board of Governors who are all the owners. That's what the NHL Board of Governors are. It's the owners of each team.
Yeah.
How do they sit back and go to their yearly meetings, their quarterly meetings, and not say a goddamn word? Brandon Carlo. Okay, we're gonna. You talk about the Tom Wilson on Brandon Carlo. I can throw back some examples of Nazem Kadri, 2 years, back-to-back playoff series, suspended for hits on the Boston Bruins.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah.
Zdeno Chara, Boston Bruins. Brad Marchand, the dirtiest rat to ever play the game.
He's up there.
I'm not. You can't. He's beyond up there. He's the dirtiest POS to ever play the game.
Well, Cook and Lemieux, Claude, that is. He's right there. He is right there.
Absolutely. And if people want to go back and talk about things that happened in the 40s, 50s, 60s, listen,
That's irrelevant.
Irrelevant, exactly. I don't care. For me, Brad Marchand is easily the dirtiest piece of shit to ever play the game. This is a guy who, like you said, cross-checks a player in the back of the head, back of the neck, not even 48 hours after calling Tom Wilson's a BS play. What the real BS here is, and you used this word earlier, and I'm going to elaborate a little bit further because I wanted to jump in when you said it. You said gutless. Well, what's gutless here is, one, George Peros, you are a gutless, spineless little muppet because you're just on your marionette strings dancing around to Gary Bettman's tune. The fact that you won't stand up and even go into media and say, you know what, we reviewed the Marchand cross-check to the back of the head and it's not a big deal. We're not going to. They didn't even address it. Go look, Score, TSN, Sportsnet. Go and see if the NHL Department of Player Safety even addressed it, despite getting called out by every single blue check mark on Twitter that has a hockey account.
That's what I'm saying, Dark Guy. That's why everyone thinks that my boy Tommy is the only dirty player in the league because he's the only guy that gets suspended. Because within an hour of that Bruins Caps game ending, it was announced he had an invite to an in-person call.
Yes, but you want
an hour
even better? I don't know if you saw this or not. Jack Edwards.
Oh, I don't even want to talk about it.
Hold on. This is what's really going to throw you. At one point in time, Jack Edwards even said he did not think that was a penalty or a suspendable play by Tom Wilson. Jack Edwards, the biggest friggin' homer on the face of the planet, the stupidest hockey mind I've ever heard call a game, agreed that Tom Wilson probably didn't deserve what he got.
That probably hurts my argument.
No. To a certain extent, yes. To the flip side of it,
I know what you're saying.
He's the biggest Boston Bruins homer to ever walk this planet.
If a Bruin laid that hit, he'd be calling it, what a great physical play.
Absolutely. But to his credit, the one time only in his entire career, because I can't stand him, I will give him the credit that for one split second, the blinders and rose-colored glasses or blue and gold-colored glasses came off. And I don't know if that was more self-preservation because he knew within 48 hours Brad Marchand was going to do something equally as stupid, predictable, like the clock hitting 12. Brad Marchand was going to do something stupid. So maybe he was setting himself up. But what's gutless, what's spineless, and what's an absolute joke and travesty to the game is you, George Peros, and the NHL Department of Player Safety. To not even address it. To not even show your face. You know what? People might not have always agreed with Shanny's calls or Shanny's suspension when it was Sheriff Shanny running the show.
He stood up, though.
But he put his face out there. He was the one explaining the videos on camera. George Peros doesn't even have the cojones to get up and say, we reviewed Brad Marchand's cross-check to the back of the head, blatant cross-check to the back of the head, and we decided it's not a penalty. Like, that's a joke. Now, what I started this whole conversation with was, at what point in time do 30 other NHL owners sit down in a room and say, hey, man, NLSE, you guys got pretty screwed there by good old Gary and getting, Kadri suspended 2 years in a row in first round of the playoffs. Hey, Caps, yeah, that was a pretty shiesty call there on Tom Wilson. Like, when do they all get together and start saying, why is it all the Boston Bruin players getting away with murder? Why is it all the questionable suspensions are coming against players when they're playing against Boston? Like, how is this not being discussed amongst 30 other owners other than, obviously, Jeremy Jacobs, because he probably loves it?
I don't know, dude. I really don't. None of us know what goes on in those boardrooms. Generally, I feel hockey's a very protectionist sport, and guys will only complain when it's their guy under the microscope. I think, again, I agree that Tom Wilson needs to still be careful and change aspects of his game. I believe that he deserved all the suspensions except this latest one that he's gotten. He absolutely deserved them and has earned a reputation. But I don't believe that he should be the guy in the league that has earned that reputation. I believe the league has pegged him as the poster boy of bad hits. I believe that they have done that. He's the only guy.
Why wasn't it Marchand? Because Marchand has been pulling off BS long before Tom Wilson ever laced up a skate in the NHL.
I don't know if it's because people are more scared of Wilson or something. We know Pittsburgh is, because Jim Rutherford made a number of dumb moves to bring in big, tough guys, sacrificing draft picks on their roster to try and fight Tom Wilson. And, well, Tom beat them all up, didn't he? So I don't know if that's what it is. And, again, we've talked about this before with the Bruins thing. It just looks so bizarre. I don't know if, the NHL just still feels bad about the too many men call on Don Cherry in the 70s or something, and they feel like they got to give Boston a pat on the back. I don't know what it is. I have a hard time, I guess, convincing myself full scale that there's a conspiracy to help Boston, only because, speaking from my perspective as a Caps fan, I know Ted Leonsis is real close with Gary too. You'll read about it, Jeremy Jacobs, Ted Leonsis, who's Calgary's principal owner? Ken King. And there's two other guys are in Gary's inner circle. I think maybe Craig Leipold, the Minnesota guy. There's 4 or 5 owners that are, Gary's inner circle. And Ted Leonsis of the Capitals is one of them. So I don't know. I just think that the Department of Player Safety is farcical. We've talked about this numerous times. George Peros should resign. I just ran off a bunch of examples that should have been suspensions, even recent ones. The Kerfoot hit, the Stone hit, the Pesci slew foot, the Yamamoto slew foot, which wasn't as bad, but still bad, gutless, dangerous. Marchand cross-checking a 19-year-old kid in the back of the neck. The Chara thing from way back when, which, draw up what you will on that. I just thought immediately back to that, because Chara's on the Caps now. I was like, remember that hit where Max Pacioretty broke his neck? If Tom Wilson made that hit, I wonder what would happen. And I truly believe the only reason Wilson got suspended is because he's Tom Wilson. People don't like him because he doesn't play for their team, even though if Tom Wilson was released tomorrow, the Capitals said, you know what, hockey world, you're right. Tom's a bad guy. Even though he's not. I met him my girlfriend met him at his Stanley Cup day. He was great with all the kids. He signed every autograph. He was tremendous. All the guys, Ovechkin, Backstrom, Hall of Fame players, say he's the best teammate. Now, that doesn't mean much for on the ice. But let's just say tomorrow the Caps go, hockey world, Twitter trolls, morons. You're right. Tom's a bad guy, and he doesn't deserve to be on the Capitals anymore. If he got released, he'd be signed in 30 seconds.
Absolutely.
By your team. Not like the Leafs, but by your team, one of you. And then you'd all go, oh, that sucks that we signed Tom Wilson. And then he'd fight. You know what he'd do? He'd score a big overtime goal in the playoffs. He'd set up a great play from behind the net on a forecheck on a power play to win 5-4 in OT. He'd hit a guy that took a dirty shot at your star player, maybe Austin Matthews. He'd fight a guy that cross-checked a 19-year-old defenseman in the back of the neck. Let me tell you what, if Tom Wilson had been on the New Jersey Devils the other day, Brad Marchand's face would be readjusted. And so you'd all go initially, oh no, we signed the dirtiest player in NHL history, but then the second he did something good, you'd be on Team Tom. And you all know it. So stop with this nonsense of painting this guy like he's the worst thing that's ever happened to the game, because he's not. He's just the guy that gets pegged for it. And he's the only one that gets pegged for it. I am done.
Well, I'm going to put it to you this way. Tom Wilson is old school power forward hockey.
He's a unicorn.
He is what every single team wants.
He's Todd
Every
Bertuzzi.
team's striving for.
He's Todd Bertuzzi. He's Cam Neely. Not as good as those guys, but that's what he is in today's context.
Yeah. The bottom line is the bottom line is this. And I say this with a straight face. I say this as a junior A hockey scout. I say this as a former professional scout who scouted for the OHL and NHL. I would take Tom Wilson on my team in a heartbeat.
Yeah, you sure would.
Brad Marchand,
I know what you're going to say.
I absolutely would not, under any circumstances, no matter how talented he may be,
yes,
I would not advise my team to take him, because there's more to being a successful team than just putting the puck in the net. And I feel that Tom Wilson is the epitome of the power forward. He is that old school model of skill and grit.
He can play.
Brad Marchand is a little weasel who is a distraction to your team. He's a little weasel who is a byproduct of the NHL softening the rules, putting the instigator rule in. All of these little things that allowed the Rats, and I will go back to Don Cherry, and I always agree with it. Truth be told, I actually said it to my friends, to people who would listen to me, long before Don Cherry ever said it on TV.
And Brian Burke.
You start loosening the rule, tightening up on the rules, and making the game of hockey softer. Rats like Brad Marchand take over the game, and they make it an embarrassment. How are you going to sit there and call out Tom Wilson and then cross-check a guy in the back of the head? Why? Because there's not as much accountability. He doesn't have to worry about somebody coming after him. Not like it was 20 years ago, and yeah, okay, I'm a boomer, I'm a knuckle dragger, blah, 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 talking about the good old days, but here it is.
That's not it, though.
You wouldn't see Brad Marchand's career would probably already be done.
Yeah.
Everybody asks me, and I've asked myself, why? Why has somebody not just turned around and leveled him? I'm not saying do it dirty. I'm not saying jump on him from behind. I'm not saying anything like that. But I don't care if you're 6'5", 6'6". I don't care if you're Zdeno Chara, now playing for the Caps. Why doesn't somebody just turn around and absolutely pummel this kid? Like, he licked people in the face. Why had somebody not just dropped their gloves and punched him until the referees stopped?
So, Dark Guy, what you said is so true, and it's not about being a boomer or reliving the good old days. It's acknowledging how much the game has changed and a failure on the league's part to adapt to its own changes. Brad Marchand cross-checked Ty Smith in the neck yesterday against the New Jersey Devils. Let's rewind in time before, a little bit after the instigator rule had been introduced, but when hockey was still pretty nasty, way nastier than it is now. People complaining about Tom Wilson. God almighty. Let me reintroduce you to a guy I brought up before named Scott Stevens. Brad Marchand, never would have even done what he did if this was 20 years ago and they're playing the Devils and Scott Stevens is Ty Smith's defense partner. Yeah. Never would have even done it. And if he did, Scott Stevens would have erased Brad Marchand from the earth. Yeah. If Scott Stevens ever caught Brad Marchand with a clean body check, he'd disintegrate into little black and gold pieces. Now, the NHL, after lots of fan outcry and the game being too violent and whatnot, tried to change the rules and say, hey, these headshots, they only did it after Sid got hit, but it was a long time coming. These headshots, these east-west hits, they got to stop. We're going to make this new rule called Rule 48. We're going to crack down on suspensions and everything. For a little bit they did. Not really, though. Now Tom Wilson's the only guy that gets suspended. And I agree with the Capitals. Everybody came out. Here's another aspect of it. Everybody's like, the Peter Laviolette and Alex Ovechkin are idiots for saying that they didn't think the hit was that bad and that Tom's a good player and whatever. When have you ever seen a teammate say about another teammate, it's right, Tom's an idiot and he sucks? What did you expect them to say? Come on.
Especially your team captain.
Yeah, but also, they said it's a joke because he never would have been suspended. It never would have been suspension if I made that hit. Oshie said, I get hit like that all the time. And he did. I brought up that clavicle thing with Fogle. No suspension. And they said it was a joke because they thought that the Eller hit from Komarov a couple weeks ago was way worse. And it was. But fortunately, Lars Eller didn't break his neck when he went head first into the boards. Carlo, unfortunately, got rattled and probably has a concussion. So by that logic and extension, that means that everybody that goes to the hospital, the play that resulted in them going to the hospital needs to be a suspension. And if a guy fires a puck into a guy's face and he goes to the hospital, got to be a suspension. The guy went to the hospital. Really serious. What a dirty play. He shot him right in the face. He went to the hospital. Got to be a suspension. Now, obviously, I'm being ridiculous, but that's what the league makes people like me do. There's no consistency. Guys are killing other guys from behind, but unless their name rhymes with Rom Tilston, they don't get suspended. Brad Marchand cross-checked a kid in the neck.
That's my bottom line.
This is what it is. The NHL won't enforce their own rules, and they let other guys run wild, and they pick one guy. It used to be Rafi Torres, who legitimately could not play the game. Yeah. And now it's Tom Wilson. It used to be Matt Cook.
Mentioning Rafi Torres and Matt Cook in the same breath as Tom Wilson doesn't
I know.
Do it justice.
I know.
Because we're talking about two different beasts here.
I know, but other guys were hitting people from behind and uncorking guys' heads when Matt Cook was doing it, and they didn't get suspended either. The league has a problem. They won't suspend guys, and the only reason everybody thinks Tom's the dirtiest player is because he gets suspended and gets the book thrown at him, and other guys like Brad Marchand that deserve it too don't.
Yeah. Well, and that's it. I still stand by the common denominator. If you wear a black and gold,
why you think
a black and gold B on your chest, chances are you're getting the benefit of the doubt.
The NHL does nothing to make you think otherwise, Dark Guy, so I understand why you feel that way. really quickly, on a positive note, I would just like to pump the tires of my favorite hockey player of all time, Nicholas Backstrom, for getting 700 assists. He has the most points from the 2006 draft class and the most assists since entering the league. So that's nice. And Alex Ovechkin yesterday.
So that's nice.
No, that's nice. Thank you, Nick. I love you. He was so nice. He was so nice when I met him.
After an hour of screaming and yelling to the microphone, that's nice.
Nick, have a nice ice cream cone, buddy. You deserve it. And Ovi last night against the Flyers scored and passed Steve Yzerman for second most road goals ever. And I would just like to read a hilarious stat to you regarding road goals, and just another reason why Ovi is already the greatest goal scorer of all time. Most road goals in NHL history, Wayne Gretzky. What a surprise. 402. Ovi is second now with 363, followed by Yzerman, 362, Yager, 355, Hull, 353. Here's the nuts part. Games played to get there. Gretzky, 742. Yzerman, 749. Yager, 856. Hully, 631. Ovi, to get to second all-time in road goals, 588.
That's impressive. So all that tells me is Ovi is a choke artist on home ice.
You're funny. I can't do it, man. I'm already too mad. I can't do it. Yeah, it's just great. Ovi's Ovi, and hooray! It's really great, man. What else, man? What happened to the Leafs? They had a little road bump.
Well, whatever.
It is what it is. They're gonna lose some games.
First place in the NHL.
They'll be fine.
Played 5 games in 8 nights.
Kerfoot should have been suspended. And other than that, they're still really good.
Yeah, I'm not even. Don't ever say a Leaf. Do not ever say a Leaf deserves to be suspended until Brad Marchand gets a 5 or 6 game suspension.
They should both be suspended. I do not want to ever.
Kerfoot could cross-check somebody in the back of the head and drop them, just like Brad Marchand did, which I would completely disagree with, as an unsafe hockey play. Mm-hmm. But until Brad Marchand is suspended, I don't want to see another player suspended until somebody like Brad Marchand is forced to be accountable.
Well, I guess maybe that's what they're saying in the NHL offices too, because it's only Tom Wilson that does it. So I'm fed up.
A bump in the road. Listen, nobody goes an NHL season undefeated.
It was fine. It wasn't that bad.
The Leafs are first place in the NHL.
It wasn't that bad.
I'm not even going to justify that any further. Leafs are just fine.
They are fine. I was just joking.
Absolutely fine. More of a little bit more recency there is, I don't know if you saw, but about an hour or two before our show, the NHL, after much discussion about it, has
the draft rules. Yes,
proposing changing 3 sweeping changes for the NHL draft.
I like it.
And they're still undecided whether they're going to postpone it or not. I guess that's a whole other topic in itself. But NHL is proposing that teams are limited to no more than 2 lottery wins in a 5-year period.
And that just means jumping up the board.
Yeah, sorry.
Not getting the first overall pick. That just means winning the lottery.
Yeah, because the other rules kind of that are the changes. Teams are only allowed to jump only 10 spots in the lottery win, but they're also proposing a reduction in the number of lottery spots available. So it would only be the first and second pick available.
Right, which I agree with, and I actually think that they should make it where you can only jump 5 spots, because a few years ago, and unfortunately for the kid, it hasn't worked out. He said so many injuries. But a few years ago, the Flyers finished just outside the playoffs, and they jumped from 13th to 2nd and took Nolan Patrick behind Nico Hischier. And same with the Dallas Stars. I'm pretty sure that's how they got Miro Heiskanen. They jumped from like 12th to 4th. I don't like that. Like, if you jump 5 spots, fine, but like to go from 13th to like 2nd, I don't think that type of stuff should be happening.
Well, for me, it's real simple. Take your NHL lottery, crumple that up, and get rid of it.
I think they should too.
In the end, I get why the league might not like tanking. I get why any sport might not like tanking. However, as an ownership group, if I am willing to take the hit in ticket sales, merchandise sales, to tank, to start a proper rebuild, that is my decision to make. You just need to take this whole lottery and get rid of it. There's no way a team that misses the playoffs by 2 points should have a crack at the first overall pick. Your Gary Bettman has done so much to try to create parity in this league, and the whole idea of a lottery system is kind of counterproductive to that.
I agree. The Edmonton Oilers have had 800 first overall picks, and they still can't win.
How is it that a team who had 3 first-round picks in a row and then a 4th in year 6, it was 3 years after, they got
I think they had 3 and 5, and
three in a row. 3 in a row.
Was it 3 in a row? Yeah,
3 in a row.
It was Hall, Yakupov, and Nugent Hopkins. Were they in a row? I guess.
Yeah, it was 3 in a row.
Yeah.
No, and I believe it was one more a year afterwards. So they had like 3 first overall picks in 4 or 5 years.
They were in 4 years, remember, because it was Hall, Nuge, then 2011. I can't remember for the life of me who went first overall. And then 2012 was Yakupov because he was in the same draft class as Riley. So it was the 3 and 4. Who went first overall in 2011? Was it McKinnon? No, too young. Doesn't matter. Your point, though, is like valid. And I agree. Get rid of it. They only do it to have an extra TV event. And like, it's not needed. It's boring to watch. And like, the New York Rangers were a playoff team last year and they got Alexi Lafreniere. Like, come on, man.
Edmonton Oilers infamously picked first overall 3 years in a row from 2010, 2011, and 2012. And then picked first overall again in 2015.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You're right. Hall's in 2010. You're right.
Yeah. So
yeah.
And in those years, I think they only finished last once or twice.
I think they finished last twice. I'm not sure. I don't have it in front of me, but your point stands. And like tanking, because here's what I'll say about tanking. Good teams don't tank. And do you think any team wins a Stanley Cup because they got to beat a team maybe 5 or 6 times that was tanking? You don't. 5 wins against the Detroit Red Wings don't count for wins in the playoffs.
No.
So what the hell do you care if the Red Wings or the Sabres or the Oilers or the Wild or whoever? What do you care? It doesn't mean that anyone's going to win a cup because of it.
If
they're bad, they need the player.
Now, in a certain way, and you know, we're a far cry from any verdict from this year's past draft.
Yeah,
but maybe in a way, sometimes that lottery could potentially save a team from themselves, just for the simple fact that, you know, Alex Lafreniere, not taking anything away from him. Maybe if Team Canada, if he would have been allowed to go to Team Canada, he would have been more game ready when the NHL season rolled around. We had a good debate about that. But, you know, he's struggling mightily. He's recently, you know, found the score sheet a few times.
Better the last week, yep.
Yeah, and again, maybe if Team Canada, he would have been allowed to play for Team Canada, like a wise person on this show said. He might have been more game ready for the New York Rangers.
Yeah. For sure.
But you're looking at Cole Perfetti. You're looking at Trevor Zegras, who's finally making his way into the Anaheim Ducks lineup. You look at the guys that the Detroit Red Wings did get in Lucas Raymond. Maybe to a certain extent, sometimes the draft might exactly protect the team from itself, because a lot of hockey to be played before we can judge what happened in this draft. But right now, Lafreniere is struggling more often than he's not. He's a talented player. I'm sure he's going to be just fine.
Mm-hmm. But
maybe there are some good aspects to the to the lottery. But I don't get it. If a team is legitimately not good, and they've failed themselves by drafting poorly, and they haven't been able to, right the ship, they should have the shot at the first overall pick. It shouldn't be a team coming in like the New York Rangers and getting the first overall pick. It shouldn't happen.
I agree.
Scrap the lottery.
Yep.
Get rid of it. That's the one change you can make to solve it all. Just get rid of it.
I agree. They operated with the draft this way for 50 plus years, and no one ever complained about tanking.
And it was quite entertaining.
The only time that tanking, to my knowledge, ever first came up was the Devils and the Penguins for Mario. And the Devils and Penguins, there's a great story about it online. They should make a documentary about it, honestly, of how the two teams were trying to basically out-tank each other. Now, is that a positive thing for the league? No, I guess, but it's better than a team like the Rangers getting the first pick when they don't deserve it.
Okay, but why does it have to be a negative, though? So people say,
I don't know.
It's not a good look. Why not spin it? Why not have some fun with it? Race to the basement. Which team's gonna lose worse than the other one? The league chose to say it was a negative narrative because that's the way they painted it.
Which is odd because, and I can't resist taking this shot at them, but tanking's the only reason that the Pittsburgh Penguins are still the Pittsburgh Penguins. So
Sidney Crosby saved the franchise.
Well, so did Mario Lemieux. They were bankrupt.
Absolutely.
And he didn't want to play. He didn't want to come to Pittsburgh. They had to convince him to. So, yeah, they should just get rid of it. I hate the lottery. I think it's stupid. The Caps benefited from it. I mean, they legitimately were horrible that year and deserved the pick. But
listen, only up until recently were you able to see the actual lottery balls coming out.
Yeah.
So when Edmonton was on the verge. Edmonton's on the verge of losing their franchise.
Yeah.
And all we saw for the TSN lottery show was somebody flipping open a card and going, "Oh, Edmonton.
Look, yeah.
Oh, Edmonton." There's too much to possibly come out negative there. Are you going to tell me that Edmonton won those 3 draft picks legitimately 3 years in a row? Not a chance.
I don't know. It's
not a chance.
It's hard to believe the luck, right? But
so
I don't know.
If you're going to try to give teams the first pick over Crosby, really, Pittsburgh just so happened to get that. Come on.
Well, he couldn't go to Anaheim. That Samuelis had money.
So you can't tell me the whole lottery was introduced so Gary Bettman could steer the ship.
A lot of people think that, man, and I understand why. 3 in a row, it just looks. Oof,
At least when the Leafs won Austin Matthews, we actually saw the balls coming out of the machine. Not that makes any difference because I can rig lotteries with a simple little fluid and a needle, inject some fluid into the balls and make all the balls heavier than the ones I want to come out. That's neither here nor there. Well, I'm just saying, at least we saw the balls coming out.
And the Leafs actually tried. The Leafs, that was the first Babcock year. Ugh, I hate bringing him up, but they tried. They worked hard. They were just really, really bad.
I won't say they tried because
They had players that like Kadri was going hard and Riley was playing well. Like they didn't like full scale like wand wave and let guys walk in. Like, did they try their hardest at the management level or anything? No.
Go back and look at the roster that they finished with that year.
I know.
Don't tell me anybody was trying to win.
They weren't trying to win, but they weren't trying to be embarrassing. I'll say that, right? Really quick, Dark Guy. Boy, this has been a heated show. I'm so hot. I got a shower after this, cold shower to wash the anger off. I just want to say, local boy here in Listowel, where I call home, Corey Connors. Canada, I think, has their next legitimate golf superstar here. He finished third at the Arnie Palmer this weekend. Congrats, Corey. We've had him on MWO Sports before. We'll try and get him back. He was awesome, man. And he's won some tournaments on the tour. He's a really humble, down-to-earth guy, just a good Canadian boy that everybody can get behind. I'm not saying we have the next Mike Weir on our hands, but this guy can play. And he was tied for the lead after day one with Rory McIlroy, and he finished third. Congratulations, Corey. Well done. And again, it's International Women's Day. Thanks to all the women in our lives, Dark Guy. I know you're really close with many women in your lives, like your mom, obviously. And, I think that there are a lot of great female voices and faces in this industry that deserve more attention. I mentioned Marissa Roberto earlier. I love her content. She does great work with esports as well, which is booming. Julia Teixeira as well at the Bar Down Crew. I think she does a great job. We got people like Kate Burness, Cassie Campbell-Pascal. We got people like Sammy Joe Small and Kendall Coyne-Schofield doing great things. The PWHL just announced that they're going to finish their playoffs. They're streaming games. They're easy to find. Watch these women. They're awesome. I love watching Hillary Knight, even though she's American. And Marie-Philippe Poulin, MPP. There is an easy way to support women in this industry, and that's just to watch. I think of Doris Burke as well, who's done so many big sporting events. She's incredible, fantastic. Just if you can, it doesn't mean you have to go on Twitter and be loud about it and say, hey, look at me, I'm supporting women. Just do it. Just watch. Lend an eye, lend an ear. There are a lot of talented women in this industry that deserve your time. Katie J. Strang of The Athletic, I'll shout her out as well. She does a fantastic job. She might be one of the best journalists in sports. Happy International Women's Day, guys.
It doesn't even have to be just sports. I'll give a shout out to a couple of my favorites. Tessa Bonhomme, absolute beauty. The Canadian hockey player, Team Canada gold medalist.
We got to get her on the show.
Oh, that'll be that's one text message. That's not a problem.
Dang,
your co-host is Dark Guy, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, me and Tessa.
Sudbury born and bred.
We're good. Her dad was my coach. We'll have her on the show. Tara Sloan has always been nice to me through my whole endeavors as Dark Guy. Jana Hefford for one as well.
Yeah.
But even getting out of the sporting world, Christina Tanagla, always been very kind to me. Very talented young lady. Love seeing her on CP24 there for years. So
she's awesome. Yeah,
absolutely. And one of my dad's favorites. I do have to say. Christina came out to one of our home openers in Aurora, and my dad was just like, he would not leave her alone. I watch you every day, 24 hours a day, CP24, Christina Tanagla. She actually gave him a shout out on CP24 there one day. So he was in all his glory. But yeah, International Women's Day, it doesn't even have to be, like I said, just in sports. There's many talented women out everywhere. I guess on that note,
Amrit Gill as well on Hockey Night Punjabi. She did a great job on Hockey Day in Canada when they had them on in English and everything. She's fantastic too, really talented. She's got a bright future.
Absolutely. On that note, we're going to wrap this up. It was a solid edition of the Ryan Drury Show here on the FHN Network.
I'm sorry.
I'm glad I was able to be part of it. Huge thank you to our producer, Tyler Fines. Huge thank you to the FHN Network for having us on their network. And as always, a huge thank you to Dry County for Hey Hey Cheers, our opening credits of the song. Until next week, remember, folks, where there's smoke,
there's fire.
there's a Drury.